But yeah, we should probably, it is the top of the hour, so we should probably um, kick things off. So, all right. So just wanted to welcome everyone to today's webinar. It is at the top of the hour, so we're going to kick things off. Before we get going, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are using Zoom for the webinar today, so we do have a chat. We do have a webinar chat option there. So if people want to sort of, type something into the chat, totally okay. We do also have the Q&A option as well. And so the Q&A can sometimes be better if the chat is really hectic, which hopefully it won't be today. You can put your question in there and then we can either answer it by typing the answer in, or we can answer it live, which is usually our preferred method anyway. So yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the slides, and we'll hopefully be able to show you some elements of what we're going to talk about within the Hamina tool today as well. So what we are going to cover, we're going to talk about the faster design elements within Hamina, some of the smarter decisions that you can make within the tool, and then we are going to talk about some of the collaboration side as well. And I just thought, the sole surveyor in this image looked a little bit, he looked a little bit lonely. And with Nathan joining me on the webinar today, I just sort of thought, like, let me ask ChatGPT, like, what if myself and Nathan were doing a site survey together? What would that look like? And so we generated a nice image. Let's bring that in. There we go. Look at that. And so I'm a little bit worried,
Where's my
because
sunnies? Where's my sunnies? There's no sunnies on the mirror reflection.
yeah, I guess Nathan, you're not wearing your trademark sunnies, in the on the webinar, definitely not in the reflection. And for some reason, I'm wearing half a tuxedo, and then the lower half I'm in jeans, so that's a little bit weird. But anyway, we'll say this is probably going to get better over time, as a lot of AI stuff is, our tool notwithstanding as well. So anyway, let's sort of get going. The topic today is, in case you're sort of like, what is this bizarro webinar that I've just joined? It is going to be faster, smarter wireless network design. And so we're going to talk about the usage of Hamina, but we're going to talk about it with Nathan, who's joined us today from YTech Solutions. And so, Nathan has been in the Wi-Fi game for quite some time. He's going to do a quick introduction in a minute. But basically, they've been YTech have been using Hamina for a little bit, and they've been using it for quite a diverse array of different scenarios and solutions for customers and the like. So I just sort of thought it would be good to get a perspective from a customer that's using the tool to implement wireless in different ways. So quick introduction from myself. My name's Grant, Director of Solutions Engineering for Asia Pacific for Hamina Wireless. And then, Nathan, you're also on the webinar. I might hand it over to you to give
Yeah.
yourself a bit of an intro as well.
Thanks, heaps, Grant. Yeah, look, I'm Nathan. I'm Nathan Spanner. I'm the Managing Director of YTech Solutions. We're an Australian-based wireless and networking company. Uh, I've used Hamina, yeah, quite some time. We saw obviously the beta when it was first released, and then as it's advanced within the technology space and site surveying space, we're seeing it now progress a lot more, and we're using it a lot more. A lot of the customers that we're dealing with are requesting it. So yeah, we've started to shift our focus and see the benefits that it's been providing us as a company and our customers. If you want to go to the next slide,
Yeah,
Grant.
absolutely. So we're not going to spend too much time on what the agenda sort of is. I think a lot of that is, from the sign up form. I am particularly interested in getting down to the real world outcomes, because I've sort of coined the acronym WWND, which is what would Nathan do. And so we will actually go through some like real world scenarios as we talk through here. And then you've got a really interesting one towards the end, which we'll also sort of cover, and, what tools you used, and how you sort of found out, how to solve the particular customer's situation. So I guess, time to value, and Nathan's going to talk about this in a little bit, but just to summarize, I guess, time to value is just spending less time, I guess, in the tool and more time sort of, implementing solutions for the customer. So, that can come in the form of, understanding the floor plan concepts for the customer. Often, we as, network engineers, particularly when we're deploying wireless, we spend a lot of time with floor plans, but customers not so much. And so there might be, we can use some of the things within Hamina to better present that to the customer. The costing scenario, so how do we engage on the commercial side? So is it a time-based engagement, or is it a cost-based engagement? So depending on fixed cost scenarios. Being able to do, like, I guess, quick measurements within Hamina for like quotation purposes and using the 3D elements within the tool. I guess that sort of feeds into the AI side of things, being able to quickly draw in walls and attenuating objects and things like that. And then even, at least from my perspective, it's very quick to be able to share like a browser link. So if I am talking to a customer, and I show them a report, I can quickly send a report to them. And so, Nathan, do you want to sort of maybe elaborate on some of the points that we've covered there and how that sort of helped you engage, I guess, at that customer level, who are usually not as technically adverse as what we would be with a solution like Amina?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, Grant. I think understanding the floor plan concepts is a big thing because a lot of the people that we deal with, a lot of the customers that we deal with, they're either like CIOs, they haven't actually been to the site that they're building, these large scale warehouses. They might be Sydney based and they're building a warehouse in Singapore. So what we actually do is we put that into Hamina and utilize that 3D feature to actually get them to understand what their facility may look like. So not only are we looking at the IT side of things, we're also looking at physical architecture, so it allows the customer to understand what they're expecting from their construction if it's a new build, and then being able to understand, how the mounting would look like, what their design may look like, and working through the customer as a journey with the customer from start to finish. What we've seen, yeah, sometimes we do quote on square meterage, but generally fixed price, end-to-end pricing is what customers expect. So there's no sort of hidden guarantees in there. The browser link one was, we were actually discussing this before we went live, Grant, and that's a very important one because we have a lot of customers, large scale pharmaceutical companies or defense clients, which can't actually accept things like Dropbox or other tools to send. So having a browser link to be able to share it straight to them is fantastic. I actually had a customer that, yeah, we struggling to get a large scale report out. And then, yeah, we just sent across the browser link and everyone could click it and view it and then walk the customer through it on a screen share. I think it was
The
very
other thing that
important.
I just yeah, look, I think that was like a really good one. The other thing that I'd like to sort of remind people is you don't need a copy of Hamina to view the report. You basically just
Yeah.
you click a link, it loads up the project in a browser, and you can, as the report creator, you can enable them to download a PDF version of that, or most of the default is the browser report, which does allow all the 3D elements, and you can walk them through maybe your design methodology, so to speak. Um,
Exactly. Well, the question that we had was from that customer, do we need a license to view it? And I said, no, this is the browser link here. I'll enable it. And they were stoked. They were able to see it and then, yeah, walk them through it once again and what they're receiving. And it's a lot neater too, I think, not having to go through a full process. Definitely beneficial.
yeah. All right. So before we get into maybe some of the comparisons, we should set some expectations. And I mean, I think when, maybe, companies are engaging, YTech for, for maybe some professional services, or maybe like, hey, I need you to fix my network, keeping it at a very high level. Um, they're probably expecting that, maybe their network doesn't quite operate, like the Lamborghini that we've got in the, that we've got in the picture. It probably is closer to operating maybe something a little bit like this, where it's maybe the paint job isn't fantastic. It's got some cardboard spoilers and things like that on there, which isn't great. But that's obviously a reason why they are engaging, with yourself, Nathan. So maybe, let's, to we'll go into some sort of deeper examples here. I guess this is a good case of what what that collaboration may start to look like, right? Where you've got this sort of, on the left, you've got this 2D representation of of a pretty standard, pretty basic warehouse environment, and then you've designed that up in Hamina. Probably took you a couple of minutes to do, and then you've got this sort of 3D representation, which shows you, like the truck delivery area. It looks like you've got a separate cool room. You've got the stairwells in there. You've also got, like, the switching area. Like maybe take us through, like, how does that sort of work, I guess, integrated with your workflows?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think what we this one here in particular was we had to get it out quite quickly. Got a call from the customer. Look, can we visualize it? Can we understand what we're actually, going to do here? Get a solution. And I think being able to quickly draw that inside Hamina was definitely beneficial. And I actually had a screen share with the customer and said, look, this is what it actually looks like. It looks a lot small on the left-hand side, and then when you actually view it on the right-hand side, you can actually understand where the racking is, the aisles, where the comms room's going to be on the right-hand side, etc. I think, yeah, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the benefits of that. So like when we're walking through with the customer, we said, look, you've got two options here. You've got either a band-aid solution, which you're providing the access points within the middle of the aisle, and as you can see on the left there, it's not in each aisle. You're trying to get the bleed across the aisle. We see this issue quite a lot, especially when it comes to peak season within Australia now and a few other countries towards the end of the year. They start filling up their racks. So when everything's working well during mid-year, a lot of our calls from our customers come, requesting site surveys or issues with their designs based upon the design aspect being on the left-hand side, where what we're started to see now is a shift, and even in the way we design, that we're looking at that wall solution. They're pushing everything towards the walls if we can, and providing an access point per aisle to ensure that the client, as it roams, it gets good coverage and there's direct line of sight. And I think Keith Parsons might have mentioned that, where put the access point where the customers are. Don't look line of sight wise. Always allow the customer or the client device to be able to see that access point. Don't hide it. So I think that's been beneficial in our methodology of the design phase, and we've seen very, very good results from this.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of like a bit more of a breakdown here, I guess, of what was being used, and maybe how you, I guess, convince the customer of, like, hey, like, this mid-aisle solution isn't ideal. And I mean, when you compare them both side by side, you can visually see that. But maybe if you want to break it down, there's some pretty interesting points in here about, the height, the serviceability, things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And we do projects all across the world, so I see different designs every day. We work with it, and not only that, we also work heavily with cabling contractors and installation experts. So it's all good putting a great design on the table, but when it comes to actually installing it, you're working at 8 meters of height on a scissor lift. You're paying for the scissor lifts. You might need a scissor lift there for 5 to 10 days. Depending, you might have two cablers, three cablers running on a large scale project. So, you're looking at $1,200 per scissor lift per day, three of them for 5 days. So the costs add up for that customer. So serviceability of it, that too, is not beneficial, because if something happens, we've had access points that have died mid-aisle, 14 meters up. We have to get a specialized scissor lift. We have to block the whole area off, run a cab change, have coordination to actually unmount that and install it. And once again, going back to that, racking may fill during peak seasons. So yeah, we have plenty of issues with this from what we've seen in the past.
I would imagine, being at that height as well, just if you did have to, physically interact with that, there would probably be a fair bit of, OH&S paperwork
Correct.
that would need to be right, and like you said, almost an entire aisle needs to be sort of shut down, or a subsection of that to be able to access it. So yeah, that you know, ideally that's not going to be the case, and you put the access points up, and it's a set and forget. But things can happen where I'd imagine that yeah, that would be a bit of a pain.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Look, we've had one design that we did for a trucking company, and they had a conveyor belt that was an electrical conveyor belt, so it actually moves with the current across. So the top is high voltage, and if you picture like a conveyor belt running across the top of the roof, and it goes back and forth, and then they had an access point on top of that area, that big conveyor belt that moves the machinery, and it was, yeah, high voltage. Like we had to go out and try remediate that from the previous company that had done the design, and it wasn't suitable. We had to cancel obviously we had to run our changes across, and there was obviously OH&S requirements, but it was impossible to service that. Too risky. Obviously there was an OH&S issue with that, and yeah, it didn't as the conveyor was moving back and forth, the clients were dropping out as it would go right. The access points here, the conveyor would come to the middle, drop the clients out, and then it would move, and the clients would reconnect again. So
Yeah,
that's
not
why it does
ideal.
not ideal.
Not ideal. So the end of aisle solution this seems like this was the direction that you ended up going with in the end. Maybe talk us through like what that methodology looks like, and how you sort of got there.
Yeah, look, we've been doing a lot, as I said, a lot more on the walls. We're working a lot with a lot of the vendors, bracket companies that sell this sort of stuff. And what we've seen is it's easy to service, easier to run cables, catenary wires, and cable trays. A lot neater too. We can have the cable tray directly on that bottom. Look, as an example, on that bottom section there, we can have one cable tray with all the cables coming straight down. We can service it with a ladder, not needing a scissor lift, and we have APs in each aisle providing direct line of sight to that client. We've got a good side lobe too as the client gets to the edge of the aisle, and goes between, like as an example, one aisle one to aisle two. There's a good side lobe there from that access point on the wall facing, and obviously Grant, you can show that and display that in Hamina with the client roaming feature.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think we've got in the
Ah,
next
there it
slide.
is.
So, yeah, and we've got a project in the background that we will get to as well that we can sort of show maybe a few scenarios here. But yeah, before we went live and we'd been sort of talking about this back and forth over the last week or so, you were sort of saying that the client experience, within Hamina, that you can sort of simulate different clients and how they would interact with the environment and roam, and you can sort of get things like MCS rates and things like that. That's been quite, I guess, quite critical as well. I mean, from where I sit, I think that does avoid the redesign, or the over design aspect of it, but then also sort of being able to help explain like this is why we're going with a certain type of access point, a certain type of antenna, because I find a lot of people are a little bit afraid to sort of step out from the
Yep.
the omni access point, threshold, and then that client experience then also shows the expected roaming, experience of the client as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think there was one question there that I just saw pop up, and that is correct. Sometimes does it's not easy to run it on the walls within a warehouse. Sometimes there is a rack that runs along the back end of the walls. So what we generally do is we use a specialized bracket provided by companies like Ventev or Azalatex, with a threaded rod coming down at the edge of the aisle. So we're getting a good solid back load, but we're providing that straight down in front of that backing of the rack. Maybe we can try draw it in the Hermina Planner grant if simulate
Yep.
that. And yeah,
Yeah.
we've done that on a large scale warehouse. We ran that. We had a similar issue where we tried to go on the walls. There was a rack running all the way along the walls. It was a 110,000 square meter warehouse. So we ran it in front of that rack and had patch antennas running along that back area. So yeah, we try to avoid using omnidirectional as much as possible within a warehouse environment from what we've seen in the testing that we've done. But obviously, sometimes there is times where you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've actually got an image from one of your installs using the threaded rod as well. So we'll show that, and we'll see if we can refer back to that from Bobby's question before. So I guess supporting sort of on the decision making front, or better decisions anyway. Maybe this was one of the suboptimal
Yeah, no,
placements. The thing that like it's easy to laugh at some of these things, but the thing that I also like to I guess sort of preempt with any of these things is that we're never privy to what the constraints were, what the budget requirements were, what the maybe the person that was installing the access points was told before we come in to fix some of these things, right? And so there can always be a myriad of reasons as to why they maybe had to place an access point, in this case between the racks or in some other suboptimal place. And so I always try to give the benefit of the doubt, people, again, based on those constraints. But this is generally not going to be a great experience. I can't imagine, especially
No,
in
it
between
wasn't.
two metal racks. It looks like it's also adjacent to a cement pylon as well, and then it's also got a big metal air conditioning duct next to it. So probably not a great place to put a wireless AP.
Yeah, that one was one of our customers in China where we were surveying, and yeah, so that's why it, when this was obviously a previous design not done by YTech, but when we went to survey that they were having issues, and we obviously map out all the AP placements and provide that in a custom report. And yeah, we found that this customer had significant issues, and a lot of the issues were mounting. The design was actually quite good, but the issues were the mounting and the installation. And that's why we say the design and the implementation, they're both as important as each other. With when you're a specialized wireless engineer, you should be following up on the implementation, working with them cabling parties to ensure that it's been installed as per what you've designed. Similar to the way an architect builds a house, you want to make sure that you've got your stumps all correct and your pylons all correct so the roof can fit on.
Yeah, and I'd even go as far as, when the installation is done and you're doing maybe like a post-validation survey, I would be taking photos like on the, on the server on the on-site survey app that we've got, taking photos of the infrastructure. So, okay, this is what it looked like on day one. And so if someone comes back maybe 6 or 12 months later and says, hey, the Wi-Fi is not working, it's your fault, and we find that, yeah, an access point's been moved, or maybe it's been hit by a forklift or something like that, we've got some capacity to sort of say, well, hey, when we signed this off, everything was in working order.
Yeah. We actually had that yesterday. I was in a client meeting, and we had one of the designs that we had done in and implementations in Korea. And we always document all of our AP placements and note them down. And this was from a significant time, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And so we've still got that all saved and all mentioned. And then, yeah, we can obviously import that into our Hamina file now, redraw that warehouse, have it all imported. So the customer has that on record. So if anything does change when we do follow-up surveys, we know what goes where, because you'll be surprised how many times that does occur, that you finish up a design, you finish up an implementation, you come back a year and a half later or 2 years when they're swapping out their end of life equipment, and all of a sudden things have changed to what was originally installed.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Now we've got a couple of other ones here. This could be my favorite. I feel like this could be my favorite. It does make me wonder whether, I mean, this does look like an enterprise grade AP, but it does make me wonder, like, is this just this this looks like, when someone, brings in their home router because, the Wi-Fi's got a captive portal and they've had enough. And so they just bring something from home, and plug it into the infrastructure. But, yeah, what was the scenario with the AP sitting unmounted on a desk?
I don't know really. Yeah, we were doing a passive survey. The client once again was having issues, and definitely provided this as not recommended, and to utilize as right angle brackets. So
Yep.
yeah, we see this very often also, especially within PC2, PC3 labs. It's
Yep.
something that within the healthcare vertical, we see this fairly often.
The thing that, and I'm just sort of taking a guess here, it also looks like down the bottom right there's actually like green tape for, like, this is where the chair needs to be when you are unattending the desk. So we're very, you know we want to be very careful that the desk and the chair is tucked in, but the access point, we're not too worried. You just put it wherever you want. We're okay with that. And so, yeah, I think that makes me feel like there is a ways to go to sort of help, maybe the end users and customers sort of understand, like, hey, we do need to treat these access points, these devices, with a little bit more care, for the implementation phase.
Yeah, that's why the patch lead was so long, Grant. If you go back to that image, so
Yes.
if someone comes to your desk, you can swing the access point.
And we can extend the coverage dynamically. It's yeah, it's fantastic. All right, and then we've got it. Maybe our last one here, and then we'll move on to some positive wins for YTech. But we hear about this one quite a lot. I think access points above a metal air conditioning duct is like it's like a story as old as time, right? It's like every wireless engineer's usually got a story like this. I mean, this looks like it's up pretty high as well, based on the angle of the photo.
Yeah,
Do you
so
want to
it's
tell us about this one?
yeah. This was in Singapore. So we had a customer there, the 13-meter high roof warehouse, and they've kind of installed an omnidirectional access point. Um, yeah, so it was an interesting one. We've obviously manipulated that design to what the customer originally had, and
Yep.
yeah, this that customer was once again experiencing dropouts, issues, the common story.
Yep.
So they're
Yep.
definitely not recommended.
Yeah. Not great, by any stretch.
Uh,
All right, and we've had a couple of other. I mean, we've got some people suggesting. I think the AP on the previous image is called hot desking. So that was one comment. Or an RF shower is also been commented as well. And then we've had someone else sort of mentioning the under desk is another common one as well. So yeah, it does seem like we're all not immune to seeing this. And so I guess this is where engagement, with someone like yourself, Nathan, sort of comes into it. So let's have a look at some of the end results, and there's some pretty good ones here. And this did come up before. I think Bobby was sort of mentioning, sometimes if we place an access point at the end of an aisle, like on the wall, often there is racks there, and so you sort of said, Nathan, you've used these threaded rods
yep.
to be able to, I guess, place the access point optimally, but not, I guess, close to the wall, but definitely not interacting with that warehouse
Yeah.
rack.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we actually had another photo that I should have included it. So this here was at the edge of the aisles. We had a large square section, probably about 20 meters wide and about 100 meters long, towards the edge of the aisle. So we ran these patch antennas off these threaded rods here. Obviously, when you're doing this, make sure that the customer's not using a forklift or anything along the lines of that, which could impact your design and your implementation. So in this case, the forklifts weren't running within this area there, which we allowed us to get I think this height of the ceiling was about 15 meters. This was in the US. So we got a threaded rod roughly around 3 meters down, just to give it more coverage and a nicer shape on this patch antenna. Um, and then yeah, we saw definitely some good results. We ran about 4 or 5 of these along that area and saw some really good results, obviously staggered. But within the aisle section, we had a similar bracket tilted with a directional antenna. So this is a specialized T-clip that clips up on the top of the pillars on the warehousing, as you can see at the top there. I don't know if you can see it, if you can zoom in, probably can't. It's like a T-clip that goes over the
Yeah.
top and structurally holds the threaded rod. So it's a very, very nice solution to run if you can't run it along the walls, in which we couldn't because we had a rack there that was about 6.5 meters high.
Yeah. We'll have your contact details toward the end, Nathan. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, if anyone's sort of interested to maybe know more, they can contact you on that as well. But yeah, that's a pretty unique solution there. Um, I guess the other one, again coming back to the wall mount, is probably using the directional patch antenna here, which yeah, you want to maybe take us through. We've got a couple of options on this one.
yeah. On the left-hand side, we had I think it was a 2566 P4W from memory, a Cisco antenna, nice 120-degree angled patch antenna, just to give coverage down below because obviously there was restrictions on placing access points within the ceiling. So we utilized this to be able to service it, and we couldn't actually get scissor lifts in this facility. There was a lot of restrictions, a lot of OH&S. It took us about 6 to 8 weeks just to get a change through for this area. So yeah, it had to be coordinated strategically, and yeah, we looked at getting ducting and conduits along the wall and running it to a cable tray, which was a nice solution, nice and neat, as you can see on the left-hand side there. And similar to on the right, it was the same warehouse where we had the directional access point. I think it was a 9103 from memory, facing the aisle. And as you can see, it's fairly neat solution. And if you need to swap it out, when they go end of life in 2 to 3 years, it's easy to swap out. And the design, there's no impact to the design. So yeah, it's nice and neat.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also just noticing the conduit running along the walls, particularly on the second image as well. So I could imagine in some scenarios, like, let's say you are doing some sort of a remediation or a rip and replace, it's probably going to save a significant amount of money if the cabling has already been run through that conduit to option, something that is wall mounted. But then obviously having the right access point, the right antenna is going to be critical in being able to pull that off and giving the customer an overall better experience with the new installation versus just if we rip and replace with the same type of AP, it's probably not necessarily going to fix the issue.
Yeah, definitely. 100%, Grant, spot on there. And I think that it does, as I said, the serviceability is a big thing for us when you're working with cold storage, cold labs or anything along the lines of that. Any installation in these facilities are a nightmare generally.
Yep.
And there's a lot of business oversight on them. The business is watching these areas, carefully, especially R&D labs. So it needs to be, yeah, as I said, once again, strategically done and coordinated correctly.
Except for the lab before where the access point was just sitting on the desk.
That's
They
exactly
weren't
it.
they weren't watching that. There was no rules except for the
No,
chair. The chair was the only rule. That was a hard rule. Um, And then, so the other one here, and I thought this was kind of interesting because we do, and we'll show it in Hamina. We do actually have the option to have like an omni access point, but you can have it on a wall on an L bracket, right? Because yeah, I mean, again, I think every wireless engineer's got stories of an access point that's
clock.
you know that's placed on
Yeah.
a wall like a clock, and that's
Yeah,
not.
I bought this for you, Grant. Yeah, there it is. There's a clock there.
Oh, there we go. Okay, all
Just
right.
just chuck
Yep.
it right
Yeah.
here.
So again, if we want to be able to place it, or we have to place it, on the wall for a myriad of reasons, these L brackets look pretty interesting. So do you want to maybe take us through, the install here?
Yeah, yeah. Look, a lot of the customers, say, oh, we've got this, it's not working. We do a passive survey. We see that it's placed on the wall. We see that it's placed on the wall like a clock. So what we tend to do, yeah, is utilize these right angle brackets. We can run a patch lead or run a conduit straight from being on the wall. You tuck it away behind that bracket there. It's got a nice compartment there. Once again, it's a Ventev bracket. Really, really easy to install. I think there's two or three bolts which holds it structurally in place, and give good coverage to the client and the way wireless access points should be installed. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think
nice.
it's a quick solution, a quick win solution, and they're fairly inexpensive too. So yeah, we utilize a lot of right angle brackets, probably 500 to 1,000 every year.
Yep. Yeah. No, that does look incredibly neat as well. All right. So now, what was it? WWND. What would Nathan do? So this was like a real world scenario. Now, we should sort of preface this with a lot of the scenarios that you've been sort of talking through, like these are all customers that you've got NDAs with. You can't actually, talk about who they actually
Correct.
are.
Correct.
But these are actual implementations that, Nathan and the YTech team have done. But this was a pretty unique one. We talking about this in the early stages, like what's a really unique scenario that you've sort of come into, used Tamina, and and sort of solved the issue. So could I start this by saying, like, is this you on the right, Nathan? Like walking in, wireless
Yeah.
engineer into the building and just looking at the ceiling, like a bit of a crazy person. Is that a pretty, because that's what happens with me, or just about all the time.
100%, and I think that my chiropractor can agree. My physio
Yeah,
and
yeah,
chiropractor could agree why you're so stiff on the left side of your neck.
yeah.
It's
Uh,
it's not generally from gym. It's just looking at the access points like this all day.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, maybe take us through like what happened here. It was a large customer distribution center.
Yeah, look, we had a very big DC, big Australian client, and look, the complaints were standard dropouts, coverage holes, the standard stuff that we generally see. So we asked for more details, explain a bit about what's happening, and they said as they go from the DC to the side office, they drop out. And I said, okay, that's fairly common. We hear that also. So we were thinking, okay, maybe it's coverage issues, coverage hole in that area. The client was, adamant, definitely a coverage hole, definitely a coverage hole. We've got the Nomad. I've actually got one here, the Ossium. We ran a passive survey, and yeah, from what we saw, if you want to go to the next slide, is that yeah, we found that there was a decrease of SNR, signal to noise ratio, but the coverage was still usable, still around 65 to 67 dB. So we didn't think it was a coverage issue. We had the DBX running, the spec N, and we saw that there was a lot of channel overlap, but no real interference. So we provided that back to the customer and we explained to the customer, you've got issues in other areas, definitely. There's definitely a lot of remediation that will be done and will need to be done. But in the area that you're stating, there's something else that's occurring. And what we did was we actually got that evidence that we provided from Hamina, the survey, and then gave that evidence to the customer, explained to them what was occurring, and then went back and looked at their controller settings. And we found that they had a controller setting on there that if it drops below a certain SNR threshold, the auth request won't occur. So what that basically means is the client disconnects from the site office and then rescans. So without that survey, it was impossible to actually tell because we would have said, yeah, it's a coverage issue, 100%. They've got no coverage there. So this was a very big win because this customer had been facing this issue for about two years, and they just lived with it and lived with it and lived with it. And yeah, it was basically stopping like a hard roam, cutting them off, and until the SNR reached a certain, I think the SNR on setting on that controller was set at 25 dB. So, which is, obviously you're in a warehouse environment, there's channel overlap, there's other things occurring. Yeah, it was a very, very weird one that we had found, but I was adamant, and as you can see, the Wolf of Wall Street meme that we made last night. When we figured out that issue, I said to the customer, I'm not, before we had figured it out and we are trying to, problem solve, I said, I'm not leaving until we're done. I just felt
Yep.
like Leonardo DiCaprio there. I'm not leaving
Not leaving until we can
till we,
solve this.
till we can
Yeah.
solve it. So yeah, it was a good win for us and the customer, good to explain to the customer. And once again, going back to it, the evidence that we provided to the customer, being able to show the spectrum analysis and being able to show that site survey with Hamina on the Nomad.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, all right. So we are sort of getting toward the end here now. As a bit of a treat, and like, because I love to sort of geek out with some of this stuff as well. Um, you did talk about, spectrum analysis and things like that. So we do have support. I think we've got it in production now. We do have support for the Lucid and the Y-Spy Ossium. But we are also working on integrating another sort of product here.
Yeah,
And so I'll just quickly maybe give the viewers a bit of a look at that. So,
I'm excited, Grant. I'm excited about this one.
yeah, I think this will be pretty neat. So what I'll do is I'll connect to the phone, um, and we'll have a look um, momentarily. 5953, because I love to do things in real time. I think that that's sort of
Oh, it's great.
the best way to do things. It's always a little bit daunting when it's a there we go. Oh, I've got a new firmware update. But yeah, basically,
Yeah.
we've got another spectrum analyzer that we're working on integrating. It is a tri-band spectrum analyzer. Maybe I won't mention the name, but if I just sort of go into here, you'll be able to sort of see um, what it is.
I'm very excited.
But yeah,
Very, very
basically,
excited.
real-time view, sort of being able to switch sort of between bands, and then my trusty wireless camera, we sort of switch that on, and it sort of picks things up pretty quick. So
Oh, look at that.
um, yeah, so that is going to be coming out pretty soon as well. So I think the nice thing with the Nomad is that when you buy the Nomad, you've got the four radios. It is tri-band. You don't necessarily have to get the spectrum analyzer. You can always add that in later. But if you do want spectrum analysis, that's going to be something that, we've got a couple of different options for as well. And in fact, even if you don't, want to use the spectrum analyzer, if we unplug it, um, you still get, like things like utilization and stuff like that, but it is just the Wi-Fi utilization. You do get like, things like the client counts and stuff like that as well. Um,
I think too, Grant. I think having that expandable port on the Nomad is a massive win for Hamina. I really do like that fact because as the technology expands and obviously new technology comes out, we can it's a plug and play option. And
yep,
and then and for us too, having the Nomad, we've got a few Nomads around the country, and having the
yep,
Nomad as small as it is, as I said, it's about the size of my hand. It's so easy to carry and lightweight. Um, Jetstar airline. So one airline owes me $75 for the carry-on fee with as we were talking on last time, Grant. Having multiple equipment, and carrying it on, having it on carry-on on
yep.
the airline and being bulky. You obviously you have to then check in your luggage. It's more time consuming and yeah.
Yeah. We have had like a number of people sort of comment on the weight of the Nomad. It is about
Mm.
400 grams, give or take. And so when you are surveying all day, that is quite nice to sort of be able to survey with something that you barely even sort of notice is there as well. And you do have different mount orientations as well. So Jerry, who's our guy in the US, his preference is the Ironman version. So when I say Ironman, it sort of sits at chest level, but he's actually found that it's quite handy for, it sort of sticks to the body a lot more. It's less likely to get caught like on, door handles and things like that. And yeah, that's sort of been something that, that's been quite nice. Um,
Grant, there was there was I think Troy just mentioned that behind the view of your phone, the 3D model. If you want to just because we'll display in this. Grant and I were
oh
having a
yeah, we
play
were.
before within the banter about 5 minutes earlier before the webinar started, and Grant was just
Yeah.
showing the features of the 3D. If you just want to quickly display the 3D option.
Yeah. So, and I guess just to reiterate your point, Nathan, I mean, if we sort of switch off maybe the walls and the attenuating objects, you sort of get like this floor plan. And this is a multi-level, hotel facility, for example. Now, when you do design, within the tool, you can add in things like the walls, and you can add in things like the attenuating objects. Now, I did say to Nathan, I did go a little bit extra with this one because I do use it for demo purposes. There is no need to add furniture and beds, and I think we've even got like toilets drawn in. We don't need to do that. You do not need to do that, right? But if you want to, like, you can, because when you do turn on the 3D option, like, it does look incredibly, nice and
Nice.
detailed, and you've sort of got like a kitchen area here. You've got, you've got a lot. There's a lot sort of going on. I think, yeah, we've got like some vending machines and stuff here as well. So you can do that, but it is optional. But the other thing that we are working on, and this is in our test environment, is the ability to sort of do full building 3D. And so when you click the full building button,
Oh,
you
look at
do
that.
actually get the other levels that sort of animate and drop on top, and then you've sort of got, yeah, you can sort of, I guess, maybe walk through the environment, and sort of look at different bits of the geometry as well. The nice thing here is that at the back. And this is a very simplistic example, but this would be where, like, okay, we've got like maybe like a corporate retreat area here with an outdoor terrace. We want to be able to ensure that we've got the right sort of coverage. And then, you've got sort of like a rooftop sort of spa type area and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, you can do a lot of this sort of stuff in the tool. It is pretty optional as well. So you don't necessarily have to, add furniture and things like that if you don't necessarily want to, but it does look quite nice. Um, the other thing that I would just sort of quickly show, and now this is the warehouse that we were looking at before. Um, the ability to sort of to draw this warehouse in fact, maybe we just go to the other warehouse here. And we can just delete this warehouse, right? So you get a bit of an idea of what this looks like. This might be a scenario that, that Nathan or maybe someone else on the session is sort of working through. Um, but what we can do is if we just drag and drop the floor plan in, and you can see this is like a WebP image file, but we support a whole bunch of different image files.
Awesome.
Um, Hamina does do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So if we just switch it straight into 3D mode, it will automatically scale the map. It'll automatically scope the map. You can see it's now drawing in the walls, and it will then go and draw in
Nice.
like all of the warehouse racks. Now, this is a 22,000 square meter like warehouse, but you can see here like even the racks have got this nice sort of geometry to them as well. It does not affect their attenuating capabilities or anything like that. Like you said, Nathan, it does basically show up as a full, rack, like it's full of bricks or water or whatever you want it to be.
Yep.
Um, you always, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd want to design it for a worst case scenario versus it's not being full, and then you
Correct.
can sort of build on it from there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think if we should, yeah, we'll add the APs how we had it before, Grant. If we were to do our method using the correct tilt, I think there was actually a comment there that I saw that adding AP tilt or power measurements, which is definitely possible in the current version. So we've got a 20 de
Yeah.
we've got a 20-degree tilt on this, and I think at 10 dBm
Yep.
using a 9166D antenna, the directional and the Cisco antenna access point.
Yeah. Which is this guy here.
Yeah. So,
Um,
so the down you can on the right hand side you've got the down and up tilt.
yep.
So yeah, 20 degrees is always facing down. And if you have to up tilt it for any reason, I don't know why you need to, you could just do -20, which would create an up tilt.
Yeah. And there's a couple of visual cues as well within the tool. So, this was one of the scenarios that you'd worked through before, but that we showed in the slides, where we had the 9130, axe with a 9102 antenna on it,
Yep.
and this was at 8 meters in height. Now, in Hamina, visually, you can actually see like the little pin drop. It looks taller when the height of the AP is taller versus if you go over here and you look at the AP that is 3 meters tall, the pin drop is much shorter. And so visually you can sort of understand without having to actually click on an AP, which is quite nice. Of course, maybe we just color coordinate, these APs a little bit better. Maybe we make them like an orange so that they really sort of, or purple, then they really sort of stand out there as well. Um, and then here, if we do decide to make this 8 meters tall, you'll see the pin drop will adjust as
Oh,
well.
nice.
But like you said, 20-degree down tilt, and you can sort of see there, it adjusts sort of in real time as to what that looks like. If we're not happy with that, we could, move the access point around.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying before, Grant. Like right there where you are at the edge of the aisle, that's how we ran it. When we had that large scale US warehouse, we had them towards the edge of the aisles because the racking at the back was right where the access point is placed. Now there was racking at the back there, so we had moved
Right.
it. We had moved it about 5 meters in front, and then had that threaded rod to still be
Yep.
able to have an access point at you. So if you push it up a bit more, um,
Like this way, or
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
yep.
yeah, keep going. Um, yeah, we had it roughly around there. So we had,
Yep.
a decent side lobe on the side, but good coverage down the aisle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the other nice thing here is there's been a few people commenting just on, the ability to visualize. I do genuinely like you've got this what are we, 9166 D1, this guy here. You do also have the ability to look at the antenna in a 3D mode as well.
Yeah,
And
nice.
so we display the 5 gigahertz by default, but you can look at, the 6 gigahertz antenna if that's maybe more important to you. If the customer's really adamant that they want to maybe migrate and use, 6E, they've got some 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi 7 clients. You can sort of go through that as a mode as well, and you can sort of get a bit of an idea of what that is going to look like. And then, yeah, you do have the horizontal, vertical, or the elevation azimuth in there as well if you if you need that. You've got the mounting options as well. So Nathan's favorite, the L-mounted bracket,
Yeah.
is in there too. So
Nice.
yeah, sure. If we want to do that, if we've got to, maybe work with an Omni for certain, scenarios, which for warehouses is definitely going to happen. Like there's going to be scenarios where we just need like a big coverage cell, maybe, where there's certain bits of machinery and things like that. We don't have,
Of course.
big long
Yep.
aisles.
Did.
If we move sort of up maybe this way, like you've got this like storage and receiving dock, this might be relatively clear for a lot of the time. So yeah, this is where maybe, an extra Omni may make some sense as well.
Yeah, correct. And that's what I was saying before, Grant. The one where we showed where we had the threaded rod with the patch antenna, we actually ran it right across that back end, right where that access point is now. We had them staggered across in a zigzag pattern with a patch antenna, just so the Omni wasn't providing too much coverage to the aisles, which had a directional antenna, but still
Yep.
providing good coverage to the loading dock, where the trucks were, they were barcode scanning and using automatic guided vehicles, AGVs. So I think, yeah, playing around with the design and being able to understand that pattern, that for me, obviously an expert that loves to, touching antennas and understanding the way that they work and signal coverage, etc. Being able to visualize that in 3D, like the way you had it before, the azimuth and the H plane. Um,
Oh,
I,
yeah, we had it in here. This
Yeah,
one. Yep.
yeah, that there's gold. Just to understand how
Yep.
the actual antenna interacts, because when you're looking at all these diagrams on the left on the data sheets,
Yep.
vendors might have different ways that they represent that. That's
Yep.
another thing. Every vendor represents that in a different way, but being able to visually see it allows you to understand how that antenna will interact with your warehouse environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like that, because you've got this, again, you can design it in the 2D mode, but you can also then help them sort of, I guess, visualize that in 3D, but you can also look at it from a 3D perspective as well. So, if you did, misplace an AP, you can sort of see like what that's going to look like as a result of that, right? As opposed to, if you do place it sort of correctly, like so. Um, the other thing that I found is quite handy, and that I found like a bunch of customers also quite like, is you do also have a home marker option here as well. And so what that does is you can sort of say, okay, this is 00 X and Y. And once you define that, you'll see that now all the APs have actually got a coordinate system associated to them. So they get sort of like a local latitude, longitude in a way. And so it can be really handy to sort of help map out where you want the access points to be placed as well. And so that, that can be something that, that can sort of help as well, particularly because, if you want the access points to all be placed, along the same, point on the wall and things like that, you can make sure that you line up the coordinates correctly as well. But yeah, and then we've got this scenario up the top here. So this was the original scenario that we
And and then
had.
and it never then the client makes the roaming decision. So you're generally going to get a sticky client
That's
roam
right.
on
Yeah, so we
there.
should probably
And
show that.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, that roaming feature, what we displayed beforehand was
Yeah. So this is so we've got this client experience within the tool. If anyone that's jumping on and is sort of wondering what we're talking about, and so we do have different devices that we can simulate this with. I think in the screenshots, Nathan had an Android phone, and you'll sort of see like the actual like the roaming, coverage cell actually increased a little bit for the Android device. And so you can sort of see here that, if we've got this sort of Android client and he sort of moves down the aisle here, he's still sort of in this sort of optimal experience, depending on which, and then he's going to sort of roam as he gets closer, to that cell edge. And if you look at what the coverage cell looked like here, you can sort of see that like where the client sort of roamed was about like neg 70, I would say is probably what the threshold is. So, that's sort of about right. At that point, as the client is sort of walking down, he's getting towards that neg 70 threshold. The client is already starting to look for another roaming candidate. It's already sort of,
Scanning.
looking at that. Exactly. And you can see what that is based on we've got this bold blue line to the associated AP, and then we've got this dotted grey line, which is to the roaming candidate that we've currently got. And, we can adjust different metrics in here as well if we really want. So, you could adjust the client height, particularly important in warehouse environments where, we've got these 8 meter heights and things like that. And maybe there are going to be forklifts used for picking that are going to go up 5 to 8 meters
Correct.
in height.
Yep.
We can adjust the client height here, and you can sort of see as we do that, it actually adjusts the roaming metric as well. And you can adjust things like the noise floor and things like that as well, which is, we had some examples of that we sort of talked about earlier. What we would consider interference, and that all sort of feeds into how the client is going to likely roam within the environment as well. You can tell it, it's a Wi-Fi 6, or sorry, 6 gigahertz capable client, or whether it's Wi-Fi 7. And in some instances, that will change how the client will also roam, or what band it will choose. If you are deploying like a tri-band solution, it may actually, like for instance, like Apple devices tend to want to roam and associate to 6 gigahertz over 2.4 and 5. And so it'll sort of choose that, um, for instance.
It's a nice visualization, Grant. I think just, yeah, as I said, displaying this sometimes to the customer too gives them a bit of reassurance of what we're doing, and it allows them to be comfortable. You want always the customer to be comfortable, especially when they're, inputting hundreds of thousands of dollars within a warehouse environment. These installations and fitting out a warehouse, something similar to this is not cheap. So you want to ensure that you get it right the first time. There's no second chances.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question, is it possible to measure reflection and refraction in warehousing? Yes. So we've actually got an option here to compute the fast ray tracing is what we call it. And basically, if you click that, um, it's done. Or
I think it's already
I
done.
yeah,
I
I
think it
may have
might be
turned it
already.
off. Yeah. But yeah, if you do change anything, it will require you. Let's just have a look at that again. There we go.
Ah,
It may
okay.
not be able to do it in the client view there as well. So this does, depending on the size of the site, depending on how many access points that you've got within the environment, you can sort of see here. So that's now done, and so you can sort of see that's now computed that. Now, if we move an AP, it will need to recalculate it again though. But yeah, it's not like it's an option that you toggle on or off. You just sort of click it when you've got your placement sort of where you would approximately like it, and then you can sort of go from there. Um, the last thing I'll show, and then we'll sort of wrap up, is the reporting side. So if we do create a report, which Nathan sort of talked about before, and we give it a really important name, and then we create the report, um, we basically end up with something like this. And so then if we maybe share this like so, and we put it into an even newer browser page, browser tab, this is what the customer would see. Now we've done no customization here, so you can customize a lot of the pages and put text input and things like that in, but the customer will get, okay, AP placement,
So
right? They
nice,
will
man.
get coverage, and you get either holistic coverage, or you can click on per AP coverage. You can look at it in 3D if you want as well. I don't think we've
Just
have
just
I.
to reiterate there too, Grant, there's no license needed to view a report.
That's correct. Yeah. Attenuating objects and walls, we can turn those on. So there we go. So you can switch these on and off if you want, depending on what you want to do. But you still get, all of your, AP lists. You get your radio details. And you still get like the client view and things like that we were sort of walking through as well, depending on what you're wanting to do. So yeah, it's a little bit more dynamic, I would say, um, as well. I believe. Can the customer add notes to the report? I don't know if they can add notes to the actual
Yeah,
report from
I'm
here.
I'm not think I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
it's locked
Yeah,
only
yeah,
for the
it's
user.
yeah. Yeah, probably not a bad idea though. But just to just sort of wrap things up, we're at the top of the hour. If anyone is jumped on the session and not got Hamina or used Hamina or wants to sort of know a little bit more, you can go to the Hamina website, or you can just go to us.hamina.com and sign up for like a free account. Shoot me an email. I'll give you a trial. You can have a play around with it. If you want, connect with me on LinkedIn. There's my QR code there. Otherwise, if you just look up Grant Shelley, I'm sure you'll find me. We're probably, 1 or 2 degrees separated at this point. If you want some more info, there's more info on the side there. If you want to contact Nathan, info@ytech.com.au. Otherwise, they've got their website there as well, ytech.com.au. Nathan is also on LinkedIn as well. So, if you look up Nathan Spina, I think I pronounced your last name correctly
Yeah,
then, I'm not sure, but I'm sure they will find you. Link with him there. He's usually pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So, yeah, please feel free. But otherwise, really appreciate today, Nathan. It was good to get sort of that insight and that sort of expertise that YTech are using with the Hamina tools in the market as well. And yeah, any last words as people start
yeah.
to drop off?
I appreciate it, Grant. Thanks for having me. Always great doing webinars with you. And yeah, I think the Hamina is a great product. Any expert or if you're just starting off in wireless, I think it's a really, really good product to utilize. And I think that there's better things to come in the future. Watch out for this space. It's gonna be awesome.
All right, awesome. So look, what we might do is we'll stop the recording there.